Hey Reddit. Hey Reddit. Some families have black sheep. Mine had golden children who could do no wrong. Until they could. This is the story of how I went from family disappointment to millionaire entrepreneur while watching my perfect sister burn everything to the ground. Let me start from the beginning because context matters here. My name's Marcus. I grew up in Portland, Oregon with my parents David and Linda and my younger sister Sophia. From day one, Sophia was the star. I was the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who did homework without being asked and never caused trouble. Sophia? She was the creative genius, the future CEO, the kid who would change the world if you asked my parents. Every teacher loved her. Every neighbor bragged about knowing her. She had this magnetic personality that made people want to be around her. Me? I was furniture. Useful furniture, but furniture nonetheless. Let me paint you a picture of how things worked in our house. When I turned 17, I saved up $800 from my part-time job at Radio Shack to buy my first laptop. Used Dell, heavy as a brick, but it was mine. I needed it for the programming classes I was taking at community college while finishing high school. Dad looked at the receipt and nodded. Good for you, Marcus. Learning to save money is important. 2 years later, Sophia turned 17. My parents surprised her with a brand new MacBook Pro, top of the line, $2,800 price tag. Rose gold because that was her favorite color that month. They threw a whole party about it, invited the neighbors. Mom made a 3-layer cake. Sophia needs the best tools for her art projects, Dad explained to me later like I'd asked. She's applying to design schools. This could be her future. Right, because my programming future apparently didn't need tools. Just willpower and that brick laptop I'd bought myself. That was the pattern. I earned things. She received things. I worked for recognition. She breathed for applause. Take the college situation. I graduated high school with a 3.9 GPA and got into Oregon State for computer science. Full ride academic scholarship plus a paid internship lined up at Intel. I was proud as hell. You know what my parents said at dinner when I told them? That's wonderful, honey. Then they immediately turned to discuss Sophia's acceptance to the Art Institute of Portland, which, by the way, cost $40,000 a year and had roughly the same admission standards as a community center pottery class. But Sophia was going to be the next big thing in graphic design. She had vision. She had talent. She had parents willing to drain their retirement accounts to prove it. Meanwhile, I was paying my own way through a degree that would actually lead to a career. But sure, let's focus on the girl who thought Comic Sans was a legitimate font choice. College years were my escape. 4 hours away from the constant Sophia worship, buried in code and algorithms. I loved it. Made decent friends, dated a little, learned everything I could about software development and business systems. That's where I met Jessica. She was in the business program, 2 years behind me, smart as hell and driven in a way that reminded me of myself. We clicked immediately. She understood what it was like to work for everything while watching other people coast on charm and family money. By senior year, we were talking about moving in together after graduation, maybe starting something together professionally. I'd been developing this idea for inventory management software. Small businesses were getting killed by outdated systems, and I'd figured out a way to streamline everything into one platform. I'd spent months researching, building prototypes, testing with local shops. This wasn't some half-baked college project. This was a real business opportunity, and Jessica was helping me put together the business plan. We were going to call it InventFlow. Had the whole thing mapped out, target market, pricing strategy, development timeline. I was planning to pitch it to investors right after graduation. That's when I made my first mistake. I told my family about it. Christmas break, senior year. I'm home for the holidays, feeling good about life. Jessica couldn't make it because she was visiting her own family in Denver, but we'd been texting constantly about our plans. Sophia was home too, supposedly working on her senior portfolio for art school. She'd been struggling. Turns out graphic design required actual work, not just creative vision. Who knew? Over dinner, Dad asked about my plans after graduation, so I told them the whole thing. InventFlow, the market research, the prototype I built, the investors Jessica and I were planning to approach. Mom seemed genuinely interested for once. That sounds really innovative, Marcus. You've always been so good with computers. Sophia perked up too, started asking detailed questions about the user interface, the branding strategy, how we plan to market it. I was actually enjoying the attention. Felt like they were finally taking me seriously. You know, Sophia said, I could help with the visual design. Logo, website mockups, marketing materials could be a senior project for me. I hesitated. Working with Sophia had never gone well. She had opinions about everything and a tendency to take over any project she touched. But Mom and Dad were looking at me expectantly, like this was the perfect solution to both our problems. Sure, I said eventually. That could work. Biggest mistake of my life. Over the next few weeks, Sophia became obsessed with the project. She'd call me constantly with new ideas, design concepts, marketing strategies. Some of them were actually good. She had an eye for visual presentation that I lacked. But then she started suggesting changes to the core functionality. Why not make it more social? Why not add gamification elements? Why not pivot toward e-commerce integration? I explained patiently that I'd already validated the market need. Businesses wanted simple, reliable inventory management, not social media for their stockrooms. Sophia got frustrated, said I was being too rigid, too focused on the technical aspects. You need to think bigger, Marcus. This could be the next Shopify if you just listen to me. By February, our collaboration was falling apart. She designed a beautiful logo and some mock-ups, but she kept pushing for changes that would completely alter the product. I was trying to balance her input with my original vision, but it wasn't working. That's when Jessica came to visit for the first time. She flew up from Eugene for a long weekend in February. I was excited to finally introduce her to my family and to show her Sophia's design work in person. Jessica was polite, but reserved around my parents. I could tell she was picking up on the family dynamics pretty quickly. The way conversations always seemed to circle back to Sophia. The way my accomplishments got acknowledged with polite nods while Sophia's got celebrated. But she and Sophia seemed to hit it off. They spent hours talking about design trends, marketing strategies, business development. I was actually happy about it. Two important women in my life getting along. Saturday night, Jessica and I were in my old room working on the business plan. Sophia knocked and asked if she could join us. She had some new ideas for the marketing approach. We spent 3 hours going through everything. Sophia had done her homework. She'd researched our competitors, analyzed market positioning, even reached out to some small business owners for feedback. I was impressed, honestly. Maybe working together could work after all. Sunday morning, Jessica had to fly back early for a project deadline. I drove her to the airport feeling optimistic about everything. The business, the family dynamics, our relationship. Your sister's really smart, Jessica said as we waited for her flight. And she's right about some things. The social integration idea could be huge if you execute it right. I nodded. Maybe. I'm still worried about feature creep, but just don't be too stubborn about it, Jessica said, kissing me goodbye. Sometimes the best ideas come from unexpected places. That was the last normal conversation we ever had. 2 weeks later, Sophia called me at school. She was excited, talking fast about some breakthrough she'd had with the project. Marcus, I figured it out. I know exactly how to make InventFlow work, but I need to show you in person. Can you come home this weekend? I couldn't. Midterms were the following week, and I had 3 major projects due. Can you just email me the details? It's too complex for email. This is big, Marcus. Trust me. Something in her voice made me nervous. Sophia, what did you do? Nothing bad. I took the initiative on a few things. You'll understand when you see it. That pit in your stomach feeling? Yeah, I had it instantly. I drove home that Friday afternoon with a sense of dread I couldn't shake. Sophia met me at the door, practically bouncing with excitement. Where are Mom and Dad? I asked. Running errands. Come on, I want to show you everything before they get back. She led me to the dining room, where she'd set up a full presentation. Poster boards, printed materials, a laptop with a slideshow ready to go. Okay, she said, clicking to the first slide. I present to you, Sophia Flow. My blood went cold. The logo was my design, slightly modified. The color scheme was what we'd agreed on. But the name was different. Sophia. What the hell is this? It's our project, but better. I've been thinking about what Jessica said about taking bigger swings, so I developed the concept further. She clicked through slide after slide. Everything was there. My market research, my technical specifications, my business model, but presented as her idea, with her name at the top of every page. I've already reached out to 3 potential investors, she continued, oblivious to my growing horror. Dad helped me get introductions through his golf buddies. They're really interested. Sophia, stop. I was trying to keep my voice level. This is my project. This is my idea. It was your idea, she corrected, but I made it better. Look at this user interface design. Look at this marketing strategy. You never would have thought of this stuff. I stared at the screen. She wasn't wrong. Her additions were good. Really good. But that wasn't the point. You can't just take someone's idea and rebrand it as your own. I'm not taking it. I'm improving it. And honestly, Marcus, let's be real. You're a great programmer, but you don't know anything about business development. You don't have the connections. You don't have the presentation skills. That's when it hit me. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. How long have you been working on this behind my back? She hesitated. Since January. January? Sophia, that's when we agreed to collaborate. You've been stealing my project for 2 months? It's not stealing. It's partnership. You handle the technical development, I handle everything else. We split the profits 50-50. I laughed bitterly. 50-50? For my idea that you're presenting under your name to investors I've never met? You're being dramatic. No, I'm being betrayed by my own sister. That's when Mom and Dad walked in, carrying grocery bags and chatting about something trivial. They stopped when they saw us facing off in the dining room. What's going on? Dad asked. Sophia immediately shifted into victim mode. Marcus is upset because I've been developing our project. He doesn't want me to have any credit. Our project? I turned to face my parents. She stole my business idea and is presenting it to investors under her name. Mom set down her bag slowly. Marcus, that doesn't sound like Sophia. Look for yourself, I gestured at her presentation. Everything up there is my work from the last 6 months. She just changed the name and added some design elements. Dad walked over to look at the laptop screen. This looks very professional, Sophia. Because it's based on my research. I was losing it now. My market analysis, my technical specifications, my business model. She just stole it all. Sophia started crying, actual tears. I've been working so hard on this. I thought we were partners. And just like that, the narrative shifted. Suddenly, I was the bad guy for accusing poor Sophia of theft. Mom put her arm around my sister while Dad looked at me disapprovingly. Marcus, even if this started as your idea, Sophia has clearly contributed a lot, Mom said. Maybe you should figure out how to work together instead of throwing around accusations. Accusations? This is intellectual property theft. It's a family project, Dad said firmly, and Sophia is right about the business development side. You're good with computers, but she understands marketing and presentation. I stood there speechless. They were actually taking her side. Again. The investor meetings are already set up, Sophia sniffled. If Marcus doesn't want to be involved, I'll just do it myself. Now hold on, Dad said. This affects the whole family. We need to work this out. Work it out. Right. Like every other time Sophia caused a problem and everyone else had to accommodate her. That night, I called Jessica to vent. She listened quietly while I explained what happened. That's really messed up, Marcus. But what are you going to do about it? I don't know. They're all acting like I'm being unreasonable. Are you going to fight her on it? I thought about it. Fighting Sophia meant fighting my parents. It meant making enemies of the only family I had. And honestly, I wasn't sure I'd win. She had the presentation skills, the connections, the family support. Maybe I should just let her have it, I said eventually. Marcus, no, this is your life's work. It's one idea. I can come up with others. Jessica was quiet for a long time. I don't think I can be with someone who won't fight for themselves. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means I've been watching your family walk all over you since I got here. And now you're going to let your sister steal your business because it's easier than standing up to them. Jessica, that's not fair, isn't it? You worked for 2 years on this project. You did all the research, built the prototype, validated the market, and when someone steals it from you, you're just going to roll over? I didn't know what to say because she was right. I need some time to think. Jessica said finally, about us, about everything. She hung up, and I sat in my childhood bedroom feeling like my entire life was collapsing. The next morning, I found Sophia in the kitchen making coffee. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes still red from crying. Marcus, I'm sorry about yesterday. I didn't mean for it to come out like that. I poured myself coffee and sat across from her. What did you mean for it to come out like? I thought you'd be excited. I thought you'd see how much work I put into making your idea better. It stopped being my idea when you changed the name and started taking meetings without me. She was quiet for a moment. The investors want to meet next week. You could still be part of it. As what? Your technical consultant? As my co-founder. I studied her face. She seemed sincere, but I'd learned not to trust Sophia's sincerity over the years. 50-50 split? Yes. And my name on everything? Marcus and Sophia Chen, co-founders. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was something. Maybe I could make it work. Okay, I said, but I want legal documentation, partnership agreements, intellectual property assignments, everything in writing. Sophia smiled. Of course, I'll have Dad's lawyer draw something up. Dad's lawyer. Another red flag I should have paid attention to. The partnership lasted exactly 3 weeks. Slur, the legal documents Sophia presented gave her 60% ownership and controlling interest. When I objected, she said it reflected her greater contribution to business development. The investors she'd lined up turned out to be Dad's golf buddies who were more interested in helping out David Chen's daughter than making sound investments. They asked softball questions and nodded along with everything Sophia said. And when Jessica called to check on how things were going, Sophia answered my phone. Marcus is in meetings all day, she told Jessica sweetly. Can I take a message? Jessica called me from a different number an hour later. Your sister just told me you're too busy building your company to talk to me. That's not what happened. I was in class. She answered my phone. Why does she have your phone? Good question. Sophia had been borrowing it constantly for business calls. Said her phone was acting up. It's complicated, Jess. No, Marcus, it's not. Either you're in control of your own life or you're not. And from where I'm sitting, you're not. She was right, but I was in too deep to admit it. We're making real progress. The investors are excited. About your work or hers? I didn't answer, which was an answer. I can't do this anymore, Jessica said quietly. I thought I was dating an entrepreneur. Turns out I was dating someone who lets his family make all his decisions. That was the end of us. 2 years together, gone because I couldn't stand up to my own sister. But losing Jessica wasn't even the worst part. The worst part came a month later when Sophia announced she was dropping out of art school to focus full-time on our company. "This is my calling," she told our parents over dinner. "I'm not meant to be just another graphic designer. I'm meant to build something bigger." Mom cried with pride. Dad talked about entrepreneurial spirit running in the family. Neither of them mentioned that every dollar they'd spent on art school was now wasted. And me? I was supposed to be grateful that my little sister was sacrificing her education to steal my life's work. The final straw came when I discovered Sophia had filed for the provisional patents under her name only. When I confronted her, she had a perfectly reasonable explanation. The lawyers said it would be cleaner to have a single inventor listed. Since I'm handling all the business development, they suggested using my name. "My name should be on those patents, Sophia." "Don't worry, the partnership agreement protects your interests." The partnership agreement her father's lawyer had written, the one that gave her controlling interest and decision-making power. I realized then that I'd been played from the beginning. Every collaboration, every design session, every family dinner where we discussed the project, she'd been building a case for why it was really her idea all along. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I withdrew from Oregon State a month before graduation, giving up my degree and my Intel internship. I emptied my savings account, broke my lease, and bought a one-way ticket to Austin, Texas. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Just packed my car with my laptop, some clothes, and my original project files, the ones I'd kept on a separate drive that Sophia didn't know about. Before I left, I wrote a letter to my parents explaining why I was leaving. How I felt betrayed not just by Sophia, but by their willingness to let her steal from me. How I was tired of being the family's afterthought, while the golden child got everything handed to her. I left it on the kitchen counter and drove away at 3 a.m. while everyone was sleeping. The first year in Austin was brutal. I was living in a studio apartment that cost half my savings just for the deposit. No degree, no job lined up, no connections. Just me, my laptop, and a determination to prove I could build something on my own. I took every freelance coding job I could find. Web development, database maintenance, anything that paid. Spent my nights working on a new project. Inventory management software that was completely different from InvenFlow. Better, faster, more focused on what small businesses actually needed. I called it Stockmaster, and I built every line of code myself. Meanwhile, back in Portland, Sophia Flow was already falling apart. Aunt Margaret kept me updated through occasional emails. She was the only family member who'd ever really understood what I was going through. The Golf Buddy investors pulled out after 3 months when they realized Sophia had no technical skills and no way to actually build the software she'd been promising. She tried hiring contractors, but without understanding the underlying technology, she couldn't manage the development process. By month 6, she'd burned through the initial investment and was back to living at home, working at Starbucks to pay off her credit cards. Mom called me once during this period, about 8 months after I'd left. I almost didn't answer the unknown Oregon number, but something made me pick up. "Marcus, thank God. We've been so worried." "About what?" "About you. You just disappeared. You didn't even graduate." "I had my reasons." "Your sister's been asking about you. She wants to apologize." I laughed bitterly. "For what? Stealing my life's work or ruining my relationship?" "Marcus, that's not fair. She was trying to help." Same old story. Sophia was trying to help when she took credit for my work. She was trying to help when she filed patents under her name. She was trying to help when she answered my girlfriend's phone calls. "How's Sophia Flow working out?" I asked. Mom was quiet. "There have been some setbacks." "You mean it failed?" "It's not over yet." Sophia's regrouping. "With what money?" Another pause. "We're helping her explore new options." Of course there were. We're hideous. Mom and Dad were probably draining their retirement accounts again to fund Sophia's next brilliant idea. "Mom, I have to go." "Marcus, please, come home. We can figure this out as a family." "I don't have a family," I said and hung up. That was the last time I spoke to any of them for 4 years. But while they were figuring things out, I was building something real. Stockmaster launched 18 months after I moved to Austin. I'd found 2 small business partners, a restaurant owner and a boutique retailer, who let me use their operations as test cases. The software worked perfectly. My first paying customer was a local bike shop owner who'd heard about the project through word of mouth. $50 a month for inventory management that saved him 10 hours of work per week. Word spread fast in Austin's small business community. By month 6, I had 20 customers. By the end of year 2, I had over 200. I moved out of the studio apartment into a 1-bedroom place downtown, bought a decent car, started hiring contractors to help with development and customer support. By year 3, Stockmaster was generating 6 figures in annual revenue, and I was working with a proper development team. We added new features, expanded into e-commerce integration, built mobile apps. I incorporated as Stockmaster Solutions and moved into real office space, started speaking at small business conferences, writing articles about inventory management, building a reputation as an expert in the field. Year 4 was when everything exploded. A major retail chain reached out about licensing our software for their franchise operations. The deal was worth more than I'd made in the previous 3 years combined. Suddenly, I was hiring full-time employees, working with lawyers on contract negotiations, talking to investors about expansion funding. Everything I'd dreamed about doing with InvenFlow was finally happening, but bigger and better than I'd ever imagined. That's when Aunt Margaret's emails started getting more frequent and more desperate. "Your parents lost the house," she wrote in March. "Sophia convinced them to invest their retirement savings in some cryptocurrency scheme. Lost everything in 6 months." I stared at that email for a long time. Part of me felt vindicated, part of me felt sick. A month later, "Your father had a heart attack. He's stable, but the medical bills are overwhelming. They're filing for bankruptcy." In June, Sophia moved back in with them after her latest startup failed. Some kind of social media platform for pet owners. She's working at Target now. By September, they're losing the apartment too. "Your mother asked me if I knew how to reach you. I told her I didn't." I appreciated Aunt Margaret's discretion, but I was curious about what Mom would say if she could reach me, what she'd ask for, what excuses she'd make for Sophia this time. Then, in November, she called. I was in my office working late when my phone rang. Unknown Oregon number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. "Hello? Marcus?" Mom's voice was shaky, older than I remembered. "Please don't hang up." I leaned back in my chair, looking out at Austin's skyline. "How did you get this number?" "I hired a private investigator. I'm sorry, I know that sounds terrible, but we didn't know if you were alive." "I'm alive." "What do you want?" She was crying now. "We need help, Marcus. Your father's sick. We lost everything, and I don't know what else to do." "What happened to the golden child? Can't Sophia save you?" "She's trying, but things have been difficult." "Let me guess. Another failed business?" Mom was quiet for a moment. "Several failed businesses, and some other problems." "What kind of problems?" "Legal problems. She owes money to investors. There might be fraud charges." I felt my jaw clench. "Fraud, just like I'd predicted when she stole my idea 5 years earlier. And you want me to fix it?" "We want you to come home. We're family, Marcus." Family. I rolled the word around in my mouth. Was I family when Sophia stole my business? Was I family when you took her side? "We made mistakes." "No, Mom, you made choices. You chose her over me every single time. When she needed money, when she needed support, when she needed someone to blame for her failures." "That's not true." "It is true. And now that she's destroyed your lives the same way she destroyed mine, you want me to come back and fix everything." She was sobbing now. "Marcus, please, your father might not survive another heart attack. We have nothing left." I closed my eyes and tried to feel something. Guilt, sympathy, anger. But all I felt was emptiness. "I'm sorry about Dad's health, but that's not my problem anymore." "How can you say that?" "Because you taught me to say it. Every time I needed support and you gave it to Sophia instead, you taught me that family is conditional, that love comes with terms and conditions. We never stopped loving you. You never started." The line went quiet except for her crying. "Marcus, I know we failed you, but please, for your father's sake." "Mom, I built a successful company from nothing. I have employees, investors, customers who depend on me. I have a real life here, and I'm not going to throw it away to clean up Sophia's mess." "She's changed, Marcus. She knows she made mistakes." I laughed out loud. "She knows she got caught. There's a difference. What can I do to make this right?" "Nothing. You can't make it right. You can only live with the consequences of the choices you made. Marcus, goodbye, Mom." I hung up and sat in the dark for a long time, looking out at the city I'd built my new life in. The next day, Aunt Margaret called. "Your mother told me she talked to you." "Yeah." "She's devastated." "She should be. She's finally seeing who Sophia really is." Aunt Margaret sighed. "I'm not defending what they did to you, Marcus, but your father really is sick, and your mother is scared." "What do you want me to say, Aunt Margaret?" "I don't know. Maybe that you'll think about it." "There's nothing to think about. They made their bed when they chose Sophia over me. Now they get to lie in it." "And Sophia?" I paused. "What about her? The fraud investigation is serious. She could go to prison." For a split second, I felt something that might have been satisfaction, but mostly I just felt tired. That's what happens when you steal from people. Over the next few months, Aunt Margaret kept me updated whether I wanted to hear it or not. Dad's health stabilized, but he couldn't work anymore. Mom was cleaning houses to pay rent on a studio apartment. Sophia was facing federal charges for defrauding investors. And me? I closed the biggest deal in Stockmaster's history, a partnership with a major restaurant chain that would triple our revenue over the next 2 years. I was featured on the cover of Austin Business Journal. Local entrepreneur disrupts inventory management. The article mentioned my meteoric rise from unknown freelancer to industry leader. I framed it and hung it in my office, not because I was proud of the recognition, but because it reminded me how far I'd come from that kid whose parents gave him a rusty bike while buying his sister a new car. A year later, I sold Stockmaster to a larger tech company for $18 million. I kept a small stake and stayed on as chief technology officer, but mostly I was set for life at age 27. I bought a house in the hills, overlooking Austin, started investing in other startups, began planning my next venture. That's when Mom called again. Marcus, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I had to call. Sophia was sentenced today. I was silent. 3 years in federal prison. Your father collapsed when they read the sentence. He's back in the hospital. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you really? I thought about it honestly. I'm sorry Dad's sick. I'm not sorry Sophia's finally facing consequences. She wants to write to you, to apologize. I don't want her apology. Marcus, she's lost everything. Her freedom, her reputation, any chance at a normal life. Good. The word hung in the air between us. How can you be so cold? She taught me to be cold. Every time she took credit for my work, stole from my life, manipulated our parents into choosing her over me, she taught me that family doesn't matter, success is all that counts, and the ends justify the means. That's not what we taught you. It's what you showed me. Mom was crying again. I just want my family back together. Your family is Sophia. I'm just some guy who used to live in your house. That's not true. Mom, let me ask you something. In all the years since I left, how many times have you called to congratulate me, to ask about my life, to tell me you're proud of what I've accomplished? Silence. The only time you call is when you need something. Money, help, forgiveness. You don't call because you miss me or because you care about my happiness. You call because Sophia destroyed your life and you want me to fix it. Marcus, I'm not your son anymore. I'm just your emergency contact for when the golden child burns everything down. I hung up and blocked the number. 2 years later, I started my second company, an AI-powered supply chain optimization platform that would eventually revolutionize how major retailers manage their inventory. I was 29, worth over $50 million, and featured in Forbes as one of their 30 under 30 entrepreneurs to watch. The article mentioned my unconventional background and how I'd built my first successful company despite having no formal business education or family connections. If they only knew. The same week the Forbes article came out, I got a letter forwarded from my old Austin address. Prison postmark. Sophia's handwriting. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won. Marcus, it began, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know how sorry I am for everything I did. Not just the business stuff, but all of it. The way I treated you, the way I took you for granted, the way I let Mom and Dad favor me over you. She went on for 3 pages. How prison had given her time to think. How she'd realized that stealing my idea was just the culmination of a lifetime of stealing my parents' attention, my opportunities, my place in the family. How she destroyed not just her own life, but Mom and Dad's too. How she'd cost them their house, their savings, their health, all because she'd been too selfish and entitled to build anything real on her own. I don't expect you to forgive me, she wrote at the end. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that I understand now what I took from you, and I'm sorry. I read it twice, then put it through the shredder. 3 months later, Aunt Margaret called with news I'd been expecting for years. Your father died last night, heart attack in his sleep. I was quiet for a long moment. How's Mom? Broken. She keeps asking if you'll come to the funeral. I won't. Marcus, whatever happened between you and your parents, he was still your father. He stopped being my father the day he chose Sophia over me. He made that choice 100 times over 25 years. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen just because he's dead. The funeral's Thursday at 2. St. Mary's on Powell Boulevard. I'll be in meetings Thursday, important business. It was a lie, but it felt appropriate. Dad had always valued business over family anyway. A week after the funeral, Mom called from yet another new number. She was living in some kind of assisted living facility now, probably funded by whatever scraps of Social Security Dad had left behind. He asked about you at the end, she said without preamble. Your father, he wanted to know if you were happy. I am happy. Are you really? I looked around my office, awards on the walls, views of downtown Austin, a business worth more than Dad had ever dreamed of. Yeah, Mom, I'm really happy. He said he was proud of you, that he always knew you'd make something of yourself. I felt my chest tighten. Funny way of showing it. He regretted how things ended between you. We both did. Not enough to change anything while he was alive. Marcus, I know I failed you as a mother. I know we failed you as parents. But holding on to this anger, it's not hurting us anymore. It's only hurting you. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. You think I'm angry? Aren't you? I was angry for about 6 months after I left Portland. Then I got busy building a life. Now I'm just indifferent. That's worse than anger. Maybe she was right. But indifference felt safer than the alternative. Soft? A year later, right on schedule, Sophia called. I'd been expecting it. Aunt Margaret had warned me she was getting out, had somehow gotten my number from Mom's belongings. I'd considered changing it, but I was curious what she'd say after 3 years in federal prison. Marcus? Her voice was different. Smaller. Tired. Sophia? Thank you for taking my call. I haven't decided whether to hang up yet. A pause. Fair enough, I know you have no reason to listen to me. You're right. I don't. I just wanted to tell you that I read about your success. The Forbes article, the business journals. I'm proud of you. Your pride means nothing to me. I know, but I needed to say it anyway. I waited for her to continue. I also wanted to tell you that you were right about everything. About me, about mom and dad, about what I did to you. I know I was right. I don't need you to confirm it. Marcus, I destroyed our family. I destroyed my own life. I cost our parents everything they worked for. And it all started with what I did to you. It started long before that, Sophia. It started when you were 5 years old and realized you could cry your way out of consequences. It started when mom and dad decided you were special and I was just there. You're right, and I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back the 4 years I lost rebuilding my life from nothing. Sorry doesn't give me back Jessica. Sorry doesn't resurrect the relationship I could have had with our parents. She was crying now. I know sorry isn't enough, but it's all I have. It's not enough. What would be enough? I thought about it. Nothing. There's nothing you could do or say that would make me want you in my life. So that's it? We're strangers forever? We were always strangers, Sophia. I just didn't realize it until you showed me who you really were. She sobbed quietly for a moment. I don't have anyone else, Marcus. No friends, no family, no prospects. I can't even get a job at McDonald's with a federal conviction. That's not my problem. I know it's not, but I'm begging you anyway. Not for money, not for a job, just don't let me disappear completely. Let me be your sister again. I felt something crack inside my chest. For just a moment, I remembered the little girl who used to follow me around the house, asking to play video games or help with my homework, before the favoritism became obvious, before the competition started. But then I remembered everything else. The stolen idea, the ruined relationship, the years of being invisible while she was celebrated for breathing. Sophia, you made your choice a long time ago. You chose to take what was mine instead of building something of your own. You chose to let our parents enable you instead of growing up. You chose to commit fraud instead of accepting that your ideas weren't as good as you thought they were. I was young and stupid. You were 22 when you stole my business, old enough to know right from wrong. Marcus, please. You know what the worst part is? If you just asked me to be partners from the beginning, if you'd been honest about wanting to work together, I probably would have said yes. But you couldn't stand the idea of being the junior partner in something I created. You're right. I know I'm right, and that's why this conversation is over. Marcus, wait. I hung up and blocked that number, too. 6 months later, Aunt Margaret called with an update I wasn't expecting. Sophia's doing well, she said without preamble. I didn't ask. I know you didn't, but I'm telling you anyway. She got a job at a nonprofit in Seattle. Data entry, minimum wage, but it's honest work. Good for her. She's also been going to therapy, trying to understand why she made the choices she made. Let me save her some money. She made those choices because our parents taught her that she deserved everything, and I deserved nothing. That's not the whole story, Marcus. It's enough of the story, Aunt Margaret sighed. Your sister asked me not to tell you this, but she's been donating to a scholarship fund in your name. I paused. What? She can't afford much on her salary, but she's been giving $50 a month to a computer science scholarship at Portland State for kids from low-income families. Why? She said, it's the only way she can think of to honor what you might have accomplished if she hadn't derailed your original plans. I didn't know what to say to that. Marcus, I'm not asking you to forgive her. I'm not asking you to have a relationship with her. But maybe consider that people can change, that she's trying to make amends the only way she knows how. Aunt Margaret, in the last 10 years, I've built 2 successful companies from nothing. I've created hundreds of jobs, helped thousands of small businesses improve their operations, and contributed millions in taxes to communities I've never even visited. I don't need to be honored by someone who spent 3 years in prison for fraud. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant, and my answer is still no. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the scholarship fund. $50 a month from someone making minimum wage was probably a significant sacrifice, and she'd specifically asked Aunt Margaret not to tell me about it. It felt like genuine remorse rather than performative guilt. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I Googled Sophia's name. What I found surprised me. A small article in a Seattle nonprofit newsletter about their new data coordinator. A woman who'd overcome personal challenges to build a new life dedicated to helping homeless youth transition into stable housing. The article quoted her talking about second chances and the importance of taking responsibility for past mistakes, about how she'd learned that real success came from lifting others up rather than tearing them down. It sounded like therapy speak, but it also sounded genuine. I closed the browser and tried to get back to work, but I couldn't focus. For the first time in 8 years, I found myself wondering what Sophia was really like now, whether prison and poverty and genuine consequences had actually changed her into someone I might recognize. But wondering wasn't the same as caring, and caring wasn't the same as forgiving. That weekend, I was at a tech conference in San Francisco when I ran into Jessica. 8 years later, she looked exactly the same. Still beautiful, still sharp, still carrying herself with the confidence I'd fallen in love with in college. "Marcus Chen," she said, walking up to me during a networking break. "I wondered if I'd see you here." "Jessica, how are you?" "Good, really good. You?" I gestured around the conference center. "Can't complain." We found a quiet corner to catch up. She was married now, working as a VP of strategy for a mid-sized tech company in Denver. Happy from what I could tell. "I read about your exit from Stockmaster," she said. "Congratulations. That's incredible." "Thanks. It worked out better than I expected." "Better than we expected, you mean? Remember when we used to talk about changing the world from your dorm room?" I smiled. "I remember you helping me write the original business plan. The one your sister stole." The words hung in the air between us. "Yeah, that one." Jessica studied my face. "Are you still angry about it?" "No, not angry. Just done. Done with her or done with all of it. Both, I guess." Jessica nodded slowly. "You know, I used to think you were weak for not fighting her harder, for just walking away." "Thanks," she laughed. "But now I think maybe you were the smartest one in the room. You saw a situation you couldn't win and you found a way to win differently. I just got tired of being treated like I didn't matter. And now you matter to thousands of people. Employees, customers, investors. You built something real." "We both did." "No, Marcus. I helped you plan something. You built it. Twice. That's all you." We talked for another hour about business, life, the paths we'd taken since college. It felt good to talk to someone who'd known me before everything fell apart, before I became the successful but isolated version of myself. As we were saying goodbye, Jessica asked a question that stayed with me for months. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd stayed and fought for that original idea?" "Sometimes." "And?" "I probably would have lost. Sophia was always better at getting what she wanted." "Maybe. Or maybe you would have learned to fight earlier. Maybe you would have built something even bigger. Maybe." "Or maybe," Jessica said, "you needed to lose everything to learn how to build it back stronger." That night, alone in my hotel room, I thought about what she'd said, about losing everything and building it back stronger. I thought about the scholarship fund Sophia was contributing to, about the nonprofit work she was doing, about the conversation we'd had where she'd admitted I was right about everything. And for the first time in 8 years, I wondered if maybe I was holding on to something that was hurting me more than it was protecting me. But wondering wasn't the same as acting. And by the time I got back to Austin, I'd convinced myself that some things were better left buried. 3 years later, I got a call that changed everything. I was in my office, reviewing proposals for my third startup, when Aunt Margaret called. "Marcus, I need to tell you something about your sister." I sighed. "Aunt Margaret, we've had this conversation. She's sick, Marcus. Cancer. Stage 4. The words hit me like a physical blow. "What? Pancreatic cancer. The doctors say she has maybe 6 months. I sat down heavily in my chair. How long has she known? 2 months. She didn't want me to tell you, but I couldn't live with myself if you found out after it was too late. Too late for what? For whatever you need it to be too late for." I stared out the window at Austin's skyline, trying to process what I was feeling. It wasn't sadness exactly. It wasn't relief either. It was something more complicated. Is she in pain? Some. The treatments help, but is she alone? She has friends from the nonprofit, people who care about her, but no family. No family, because I'd made sure of that. "Marcus, I'm not asking you to do anything. I just didn't know. Thank you for telling me. What are you going to do?" "I don't know." That was the truth. For the first time in a decade, I genuinely didn't know what I was supposed to do. That night, I did something I hadn't done since I'd left Portland. I looked up our old house on Google Street View. New owners had painted it blue and added a garden where Mom used to park her car. The rusty fence had been replaced with something modern and clean. It looked like a completely different place. I tried to picture Sophia and me as kids playing in that backyard before everything got complicated, before the favoritism and the competition and the betrayal. But all I could remember were the years of being invisible while she got everything she wanted, and now she was dying. I spent the next week in a weird headspace, unable to focus on work or anything else. My assistant kept asking if I was feeling all right. My investors started calling to check on project timelines. But all I could think about was Sophia, alone in some Seattle hospital, probably scared and definitely dying. Finally, on a Friday afternoon, I made a decision that surprised even me. I bought a plane ticket to Seattle. I didn't call ahead, didn't tell Aunt Margaret or anyone else, just packed a bag and flew north for the first time in over a decade. The hospital was smaller than I'd expected, more personal. I found her room number at the information desk and took the elevator up, my heart pounding the entire way. She was asleep when I walked in. She looked tiny in the hospital bed, nothing like the confident young woman who'd stolen my life all those years ago. Cancer had taken at least 30 pounds off her already small frame. Her hair was gone, covered by a colorful scarf that looked like something she'd made herself. I stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching her breathe. Marcus? Her eyes had opened while I was lost in thought. She was staring at me like she thought she might be hallucinating. Hey, Sophia? What are you doing here? I walked into the room and sat down in the visitor's chair. Aunt Margaret told me you were sick. I told her not to call you. I know. We sat in silence for a few minutes. She looked like she was trying to decide whether this was real. How long do you have? I asked finally. 3 to 6 months, according to the doctors. How are you handling it? She smiled weakly. Better than I handled most things in my life, honestly. Turns out facing death is easier than facing the consequences of your actions. Is it painful? Sometimes. The medications help. More silence. I didn't know why I'd come or what I was supposed to say now that I was here. Marcus, why are you here? I don't know. Yes, you do. I thought about it. Maybe I wanted to see if I felt anything. Do you? I'm not sure yet. Sophia laughed, which turned into a coughing fit. When it passed, she looked at me seriously. I'm glad you came. Even if you decide you don't feel anything. Are you scared? Of dying? Not really. Of dying alone? A little. What about your friends from work? They're wonderful, but they're not family. Sophia, you don't have family. You destroyed that a long time ago. I know. That's why I'm scared. I looked at her lying there, small and sick and alone, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but something. Tell me about the scholarship fund. She looked surprised. How did you know about that? Aunt Margaret mentioned it. It's not much, $50 a month, but it felt like something I could do. Why? Because I took your future away once. I thought maybe I could help give a future to someone else. You didn't take my future away, Sophia. You made it harder, but I built something anyway. I know. I read about your companies, both of them. You did better than either of us ever imagined back then. No thanks to you. No thanks to me. We talked for 2 hours about the past, about her work at the nonprofit, about the people she'd met in prison and what they'd taught her about consequences and redemption, about mom and dad and how their deaths had affected her, about the guilt she carried for destroying their financial security in their final years, about the therapy she'd been in for 3 years, trying to understand why she'd spent her entire life taking things that weren't hers. The therapist says I was trying to take your place in the family because I was afraid I wasn't good enough to have my own place. You were the golden child, Sophia. You had the better place. No, I had the spotlight. There's a difference. Mom and dad loved the idea of me, but they respected you. They trusted you to be responsible, to make good decisions, to succeed on your own. I stared at her. That's not how it felt from my perspective. I know, but it's true. Every time I screwed up, they'd say, why can't you be more like Marcus? Every time I needed help, they'd point out that you never needed help. They bought you a car and gave me a bike. Because they knew I couldn't be trusted to save money for my own car. They knew you could. I'd never thought about it that way. Marcus, I spent my whole life trying to prove I deserved the attention they gave me. You earned everything you got through merit. I got things because they felt sorry for me. They felt sorry for you? They felt sorry for having a daughter who couldn't live up to her older brother's example. We sat with that for a while. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Sophia said eventually. I know I don't deserve it. Good, because I'm not ready to give it. But maybe you could visit again before I die? I know it's a lot to ask. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since I'd arrived. The woman in the hospital bed wasn't the entitled brat who'd stolen my business idea. She wasn't the golden child who'd always gotten her way. She was just a sick, scared person who'd made terrible choices and was facing the consequences alone. I'll think about it, I said. I flew back to Austin that night, more confused than I'd been in years. Over the next month, I found myself calling the hospital every few days to check on her condition. Not talking to her directly, just asking the nurses how she was doing. Stable, they'd say. Comfortable. Having good days and bad days. 3 weeks after my visit, she called me. Marcus, I need to ask you for something. What? I'm writing letters to people I hurt to make amends as much as I can before I die. Okay. I wrote one to Jessica, apologizing for ruining your relationship, but I don't know how to reach her. I was quiet for a moment. Why do you want to apologize to Jessica? Because I stole more than your business idea. I stole your happiness. She was good for you, and I destroyed that. Sophia, Jessica and I broke up because I couldn't stand up for myself. That's not your fault. It's my fault that you had to choose between standing up to me and keeping peace with the family. I put you in an impossible position. She was right about that. I'll get you her contact information, I said. A week later, Jessica called me. I got the strangest letter today, she said. From Sophia? 3 pages of apologies for breaking us up. She says she's dying? Cancer. 3 to 6 months. Jesus, Marcus, are you okay? I don't know. It's complicated. Are you going to forgive her? I don't know that either. Jessica was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, the letter seemed genuine, and it answered some questions I'd had for years about why everything fell apart so quickly. What do you mean? I always wondered why you gave up so easily. Why you didn't fight harder for us, for your idea, for your place in the family. But after reading her letter, I think I understand. Understand what? You weren't giving up. You were protecting yourself from people who were never going to change. Maybe. Marcus, she asked me in the letter if I thought you'd ever been happy, really happy. What did you tell her? I told her I didn't know. Have you been? I thought about it honestly. Professional happy, financially happy, but personally, I don't know. I've spent so much energy building walls that I'm not sure what's behind them anymore. Maybe it's time to find out. 2 weeks later, I flew back to Seattle. Sophia was weaker this time, but more alert. The doctors had adjusted her pain medication, so she was more comfortable, but tired easily. You came back, she said when I walked in. I said I'd think about it. And I thought about it. We talked for hours over the next 3 days. About childhood memories I'd forgotten. About the pressure she'd felt to live up to expectations she didn't understand. About the guilt that had eaten at her for years. About mom and dad and how they'd tried to love us both, but had gotten caught up in their own expectations and fears. They weren't bad people, Sophia said on my last day there. They were just limited. They didn't know how to raise two different kids without comparing us to each other. No, they weren't bad people, but they made choices that hurt me. I made choices that hurt you worse. Yeah, you did. She nodded. I'm sorry, Marcus. For all of it. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to hear it. I looked at my dying sister and felt something I hadn't felt in over a decade. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not love. But something like peace. I hear you, I said. She died 6 weeks later on a Tuesday morning while I was in a board meeting. Aunt Margaret called with the news. She'd been alone, the nurses said. Peaceful. No pain at the end. I sat in my office afterwards, staring at my phone, waiting to feel something definitive. Grief, relief, closure. But all I felt was empty. That weekend, I flew to Seattle for the funeral. It was small. Maybe 20 people from the nonprofit, a few neighbors, Aunt Margaret, and me. The pastor, who'd barely known Sophia, talked about redemption and second chances, about how she'd spent her final years trying to make amends for past mistakes. After the service, several of her coworkers came up to talk to me. Sophia talked about you all the time, one woman said. How proud she was of your success. She never stopped believing you'd find a way to forgive her, said another. A young man who looked barely out of his teens shook my hand awkwardly. Miss Chen helped me get my GED and apply to college. She said education was the only way to build something real. I thanked them all and tried to process what they were telling me. That in her final years, Sophia had become someone worth knowing, someone who helped people instead of using them, someone I might have liked if I'd met her for the first time. After the burial, Aunt Margaret and I went to Sophia's apartment to sort through her belongings. There wasn't much. A small one-bedroom place with thrift store furniture and walls covered with photos of the kids she'd worked with at the nonprofit. In her desk drawer, I found a folder labeled Marcus. Inside were printed copies of every article about my companies, every interview I'd given, every mention of my success over the past decade. She'd been following my career the entire time, documenting my achievements like a proud parent. At the bottom of the folder was a handwritten letter addressed to me but never sent. Marcus, it began. I know you'll probably never read this, but I needed to write it anyway. Watching you succeed from a distance has been the only good thing about the last 10 years. Not because I take any credit for it, but because it proves that good things happen to good people eventually. The letter went on for 4 pages, about how she'd realized that stealing my idea hadn't just hurt me professionally, but had robbed me of the confidence to trust people, about how she hoped I'd found love and happiness despite the damage she'd caused, about how she'd spent her final years trying to become someone I might be proud to call a sister. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, she wrote at the end, but I want you to know that I finally understand what I took from you, and I'm sorrier than words can express. I read the letter 3 times before folding it carefully and putting it in my jacket pocket. Flying home to Austin, I found myself thinking about forgiveness differently than I had before. Not as something Sophia deserved or didn't deserve, but as something I might need for myself. Because Jessica had been right. Holding on to anger hadn't hurt my family. They were all gone now. It had only hurt me. 6 months after Sophia's funeral, I did something that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. I established the Sophia Chen Memorial Scholarship Fund at Portland State University. Full ride for students from disadvantaged backgrounds studying computer science or nonprofit management. Not because I forgave her exactly, but because she'd been right about one thing. Education was the only way to build something real. The first recipient was a kid from East Portland whose parents had immigrated from Vietnam with nothing. He reminded me a little of myself at that age, hungry, determined, looking for a chance to prove himself. At the scholarship ceremony, I gave a short speech about second chances and the importance of building people up instead of tearing them down. Later, talking to the scholarship recipient, I realized something that surprised me. I was happy. Really happy. For the first time in over a decade. Not because I'd forgiven Sophia or forgotten what she'd done, but because I'd finally let go of the need for her to suffer for it. She was gone. Mom and Dad were gone. The family that had caused me so much pain was finally completely finished. But I was still here. Still building things. Still moving forward. And for the first time since I'd left Portland 15 years earlier, that felt like enough. These days, I run a venture capital fund focused on supporting first-generation entrepreneurs. People who, like me, are building something from nothing without family, money, or connections to smooth the way. I'm married now to a woman who understands that success isn't about getting revenge on people who wronged you. It's about building something meaningful despite them. We're expecting our first child next month. A daughter we're planning to name Hope, because sometimes that's all you need to start over. Hope that tomorrow can be different from yesterday. Hope that the choices you make matter more than the choices other people made for you. Hope that family isn't just about blood, but about the people who choose to show up for each other. I still think about Sophia sometimes, about the person she became in her final years and the person she might have been if she'd learned earlier that taking from others only makes you smaller. But mostly I think about the future, about the entrepreneurs I'm helping get their start, about the daughter who'll grow up knowing that her worth isn't determined by comparison to anyone else, about the life I built from nothing, brick by brick, choice by choice. It took me 15 years to understand that the best revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's becoming so successful, so happy, so complete that their opinions become irrelevant. I'm not the overlooked middle child anymore. I'm not the victim of family favoritism. I'm Marcus Chen, and I built this life myself. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything.